must lend a helping hand. We are the world. We are the children.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening as we come together to celebrate International Day of the Boy Child. This evening, we would have carefully picked a few men to share on their opinions as we will spend some moment motivating. Unfortunately, we are not able to live stream to Facebook. What we will do in lieu is to record the session, and later on we will share the recording on the various social handles. The activity was put together by the Male Empowerment Network. Male Empowerment Network is an NGO that has been around for about 3 years. 2019 was initially started as Project Humankind, but based on the vision and mission of the organization, it was renamed to Male Empowerment Network. Because the purpose of this organization is to help to work with men and boys so that we can empower them to be better vessels. One of the things we know that's lacking in the Caribbean and the larger world is absenteeism fathers. A lot of homes are female-headed. I think the last stat would have shown we have in the Caribbean above 65% of female-headed households. So we have a lot of missing fathers in the homes. We have a lot of our boys are being lost to crime and violence. And there is a lot of other issues that we have affecting our boy child that are not spoken about on a larger scale. What we are hoping to do with this organization is to have those conversations, be it through the virtual platform, outreach sessions, small groups discussion. We've been doing work with the boys in the juvenile centers. We've been doing one-on-one outreach with men. And it's heart-rending when you have discussions with persons in here and things like, you know, I have never seen my father, not even a picture of what this individual looked like. And men sharing various challenges. Through the Male Empowerment Network, we will collaborate widely to ensure that we can be able to curb some of these issues. This is actually our first major event outside of those small group sessions that we've done. Following on to this, by the end of this month, we'll be having a mental health session, which will also be focused primarily on mental health issues affecting the male. That session, we're hoping to get Dr. Shane Tull, who is a mental health specialist and a global clinician working in the field of mental health, to be our keynote speaker there. This evening, our panel consists of 3 distinguished gentlemen in their own rights. We have our first speaker, Otto Augustin. Otto has been involved in crime violence reduction projects across CARICOM for in excess of 15 years. He would have spent the last 4 years working primarily within Guyana, St. Kitts Nevis, and Barbados. He has held several positions, leadership roles on the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Advocacy, Trinidad and Tobago Crime and Reduction, and various other boards. He's also the current director of one of the NGOs that is focused on youth leadership. Our second speaker is no stranger to the local shores. He's been working very diligently fostering avenues for local talents here in Guyana and across the Caribbean to collaborate and grow. He would have also been involved in a lot of activities in US and other foreign states where he continued to motivate young men to be better. He continued to create a platform for upcoming artists to be able to nourish their talents and grow. Chris Gopal has become a household name for his comedic exploits, but with his philanthropic efforts, these are things that are more kept on the softer side. And we are pleased to have him here as well as one of our panelists. And closing our panel off, we have Dr. Kwesi Grant. Dr. Kwesi Grant is also growing to become a Caribbean name when it comes to youth leadership development. He is a medical doctor by profession, the president of the Guyana National Youth Council, and has been integral in youth leadership development work. I know he's done work in all 10 of the administrative regions in Guyana and would have also traveled extensively. So this evening we are in for a treat as these distinguished gentlemen will share with us their views, and we'll also have an option at the end to interact with them by way of asking questions. So without any further ado, I would like to call to the virtual lectern our first speaker, Mr. Otto Augustin.
Thank you very much, Richard, for your introduction. Good evening, fellow panelists. Good evening, guests. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to join us this evening, and also good evening for those of you who will be viewing it after. So I would like to first of all commend the Meal Network for doing this discussion, hosting this discussion along with Orange Light. Oftentimes we know there is a focus on women and girls. And while that is a focus and should be a focus, I think it's absolutely necessary for us to focus on our young men and boys specifically as we commemorate today, the Day of the Boy Child. As Richard would have highlighted, I have many years of experience doing primary prevention work. And when we speak of primary prevention work, specifically as it relates to crime and violence across our beautiful Caribbean region. And when we look at statistics and the data, when we look at our prisons, we can safely say that our men outnumber our women. However, when we think about the interventions, they more or less mostly target our women. And while it is important, as I indicated before, for us to target our women and girls, it baffles me, and I think it should also concern everyone who is hearing this. Why more is not being done to focus on our young men? Taking the problem tree approach, it's important for us to look at the root causes. And if we are to ask ourselves, what are some of the problems? I am sure if I engage fellow panelists and even our audience, we'll be able to come up with numerous challenges that we face as men, that we would have faced as young men, and we continue to face as a society, even the females around us. And some of those challenges we face in spite of our genders, male or female. However, when we look at the resources that are available, most of it are not only targeted toward women, but are the kind of interventions that will predominantly speak to the female species. So if we look at where interventions are mostly hosted, there are a lot of workshops And I am not saying that workshops are not good. But when we look at the attendees of these workshops, they are most of the time female dominated. When we look at the facilitators of these workshops, most of the time they are led by females. And we commend our female folk for the work that they have been doing. But I want to today challenge our men folk, because we hear about the single father, the single mother household, the single parent household, that is predominantly the mother. We hear about the absenteeism of fathers. Sometimes even with the father being in the household, they are still absent. And that is because of culture and history, how we value our men. And these things have a key role to play in what we inherit as the young men grow up. As a young man who would have grown up in a single parent household led by my mother, thankfully I had good interaction with my father, although we weren't in the same household. Unlike a number of my peers, I remember in my early teenage years, because of my involvement in youth development work, I did a survey. And out of the 10 persons, very small survey just among my friends, out of the 10 friends that I surveyed, I can't remember if it was a social studies assignment or what triggered me, but I always remember that I did it. 2 out of the 10 of us knew our fathers, and 2 out of the 10 of us actually were living in the same household with their fathers. And even those that live, I remember one particular young lady, near and dear to my heart at the time, she mentioned that while her father was there, in her mind is almost like if he wasn't there. Which brings me back to the value we place on our men. You hear single mothers speak about, who have both girls and boys, how they are very protective of their daughters because of what is happening in the world, because of male predators, because of what is happening out there. However, there's a saying in Trinidad, and I believe I would have did it in Guyana as well, in terms of the village ram. So you lose your ram, which is referring to the male child, and it's up to mothers to secure their daughters from this ram. And all of these sayings speak to how we value our young men and how we encourage them to value themselves. Unfortunately, even in religious settings, we see, while we speak of the man being the head of the household and all these nice things, even myself, in discussions, I question myself because I consider myself a woke. I am aware of what is happening. However, in spite of that, from time to time, I too would be affected by the bias. The bias that there are some things that are considered male and there are some things that are considered female. And even presently with the onset of the pandemic, we have been seeing it locally here in Trinidad and Tobago, where a lot of persons may have, especially during the lockdown, thankfully things are opening back up now, but persons would have lost jobs or been forced to stay home because the industry in which they belong to is shut down. And most of the times it's easier for the females to find employment because of the type of jobs that they would be open to do. This, of course, would have caused a disconnect within the household. But here it is then, the female became the breadwinner. But in the eyes of society, in the eyes of the in-laws, in the eyes of the neighbors, that is the role of the man. But where did these things come from? Because in a union, It's equal parties. And if you are the one, let's say, for example, if wasn't that the man was unemployed, he may have been ill and unable to work. But if he is the one able to stay home and take care of the house and the child, a lot of women, even in the developmental field, will say, yes, you know, when we talk about equity and equal opportunity and the male and the female being equal players in the relationship, when it comes down to the reality, all of us, or most of us, have that bias. Okay, what type of man is that? He should go out there and hustle. He has the woman working. You know, so we have to challenge ourselves, challenge these beliefs that have been affecting us and the way we train our young men. Because we have young men within communities, when I'm coming back to my work as a crime prevention officer, when we look at crime and violence, a lot of young men go out there to find it. And to find it by any means necessary. Whether it's rob, join a gang, our young men are at risk because they are being targeted in numerous ways. And they are not only being targeted, I'm not only talking about the drug dealer and the gang leaders targeting them. I'm not only talking about the peer pressure, I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about what we watch on TV and what we believe a man is supposed to be. Do we really value our men as males in the room? And those of us who are fathers or godfathers or uncles, how many times have we told the young men in our lives, or do we feel comfortable telling the young men in our lives that we love them, that they are appreciated? We hug our daughters, we hug our nieces and our goddaughters, but for some reason we don't give that kind of affection to our young men. We tell our young men, don't cry, you have to be strong. But these are things, if we really want to make a difference in the lives of our young men, we need to reconsider, we need to reevaluate and let them understand that they are equally as special as our young women. So I look forward to this evening's discussion as we go forward. Over to you, Moderator Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Augustine. Right, how much time do we actually spend enforcing or sharing some amount of care, nourish, love with our sons, our boy childs? It is something we really need to take into consideration, because we have this soft mother side that we would share with our daughters or goddaughters. But when it comes to the boy, we're always rough around the edges. A lot of times we say, you know, well, or we're told that so it's passed down from one generation to the next that man shouldn't cry. And you got the old Chinese saying, be a man, you need to be a man. But what does it actually mean to be a man? And this is something I think we really need to take time to teach our boy child what it means to be a man, so that they in turn will learn how to care for and treat a female. So as we go forward this evening, you know, as you gather your thoughts from the various speakers, you can pen those questions down and we can have a fruitful discussion at the end. Our next speaker who will be sharing with us this evening, Chris Gopal. Like I said, household name, very funny fellow. He is like the brother from another mother. So let's welcome him to the virtual lectern. Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Well, that is my name, Chris Gopal. I was very impressed by Mr. Otto there, putting his words very carefully together, and you know, it was well said. I completely agree with a lot of the things that you said. With me being a comedian and everything, it's hard sometimes for me to be taken seriously. But in a forum such as this, where it comes to boy children, there's so much that we face as men. I was making points as you were talking just now, and as Richard rightfully said, as men, as boys, you grow up seeing a father, an uncle, a grandfather, whatever male figure you have. Um, Prayerfully is not somebody on the road, you know, or a neighbor that's be cussing and going on all the time. I speak the way I speak because this is the only way I know how to express myself properly. So I hope that you guys can understand. Hold on, just a second. Right. So the points I was making is, as young men growing up, as children growing up, as boys coming up, you're told, put your back against the wall. You know what I mean? You gotta fight your way out. Why you asking people for help? You're near man. You gotta stand up on your own 2 feet. You know what I mean? Why you crying? You're a girl. What you crying for? No, not because they're boys, not because we're men. We don't have feelings, right? I stopped looking at Indian movies because of the same thing. They make me cry too much. And cartoons, I watch cartoons with my girls, and yeah, stupid thing, they make me cry. And my girls would look at me like, "Daddy, you're crying," right? And I'm like, "No, Daddy has something in his eye," you know. Still, um, as men, we're abused by women as well. Um, Bear in mind, viewers, this is my personal opinion, might not be factual, but this is what I believe, this is what I perceive that men go through. A man would come home, beautiful, has a beautiful wife, beautiful home, beautiful family, and he sits in that car for 10 to 15 minutes, just sitting there, trying to compose himself, because he knows what he has to go home and get himself into after coming off 8, 10, 15 hours, however long his day was, and still got to go home and continue until, you know, time comes to grab that precious few hours to sleep and then to head back out to work, right? And our women, you don't understand the pressure that men go through. You don't understand the hardships we face. And then we have to listen to some women. "Oh, I broke a nail today. I had a horrible day. I scratched my fingernail somewhere," you know. And this man already has so much that he's been doing. Internet bills got to pay, rent got to pay, mortgage got to pay. You looking at your hair, nails, and whatever. This man looking to put food on the table, you know. So it's a lot. And then there's peer pressure. There are people that pretend to be friends that aren't actually friends, right? Then there are the others that want to see you fail. With all that you're doing, they smile with you. "Yeah, yeah, go ahead. I bet you can make though," right? And they say this behind your back. So men struggle constantly. They're called names by women on a daily basis. They make it fun now. The youngsters that we have, "Oh, men are dogs." Dogs aren't all bad. Dogs are man's best friend. They got CNI dogs. They got dogs that help people to move around. Huskies, they pull a sled. You know what I mean? Dogs aren't all bad. But men are seen by women as dogs. So how do you expect them to behave? If you put a man in a situation and you push him enough, he'll adapt, right? He will adapt. What else do I have here? Right. So these same men that these women call dogs are the same men that these women depend on to get their hair done, their nails done, their rent paid. You know, these same dogs, right? And oh, men are cheaters, men are liars. Why? Why is that so? Do we cheat with other men? Don't think so. Why do we have to lie? Because it's not easy to tell the truth to a woman. And most men that are listening here would agree with me. You could get the nicest woman in the world, and just to have a simple conversation and tell the truth, simple things, they make it hard for you to tell the truth. Our young men, how can we empower them? How can we empower young men when music, the music that they listen to, some people say, oh, music can influence the way they behave, it can influence the way they think. Wrong. Music has a lot of power. There's a lot being said in music that people actually take to heart. Young men are being told drugs, alcohol, sex at a young age, everything is okay. In the music, in the videos, these things are okay. What they don't tell you is if you do end up using drugs, what happens afterwards? You do end up using alcohol, what happens afterwards? You have sex at a young age and you have a child. They don't tell you how much milk and pampers cost, do they? They don't tell you you have to be up almost all night listening to a baby cry, trying to put them back to sleep, do they? No, they don't prepare you for these things. So again, how do we empower our young men? How do we do this, right? How do we empower our young men when they can't go to the police station and say, I've been abused by a female, I've been taken advantage of by a female, and without being laughed at and humiliated when they've their pride, a man got a pride, be it a boy child or an adult male, we got pride. We don't beg for help, we don't ask for assistance, we don't cry and let people see it, right? So how do we empower our young men when they're already laughed at and humiliated, and this little pride and everything sacred has already been destroyed, taken away? You go to the police station, a female abused me, oh, she hit me. You make a girl beat you up? You make a girl beat you up, Bano? Eh? Is who else? She also, you else, me and kids, who else? She raised she hand, boop, boop, boop. Now a young man being taught to be a young man, the first thing they teach you is don't raise your hand at a young lady. You have an argument, you walk away. Sometimes you try to walk away, they don't let you walk away. I've been in positions where I was walking and there were things flying behind me, hitting me in the back of the head, right? Yeah, I've been there. I've had my fair share. Our young men are bombarded by society. They're bombarded by things around them. Get rich quick schemes, how to make easy money, how to floss, how to bling when you can't afford it. Work hard, work smart. Pen is mightier than the sword, right? They're not taught these things. They don't understand what it is. Sometimes if there is no father figure around, sometimes there is a father figure around and daddy is way too tired to have time to spend with him, right? If daddy's abusive towards mommy, we're bombarded. Our young boys, our men are bombarded. I have all my thoughts together, but to find them, to let them just move in a smooth stream, please forgive me if I don't get them all right. But yeah, there's a lot our young men face. There's a lot that our young men go through. And the things I've just said, just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, right? I'm looking at our time, and as I said, there's so much more that our young men go through. But what do we do to help them? What do we do to empower them? Where are our programs for these young men? So I have a radio program. So what I do, I leave my door open. Anybody, any artist can walk in, and you don't have to be Guyanese. You can be, once you're from the planet Earth, you could be from Mars, wherever. Once you walk in and you want a platform to hear your music, your talent, whatever, that's what I'll do for you. I ain't no saint or nothing like that, but I'm saying we need to get activities for our men to get involved in. They said the devil is finding work for idle hands, right? So find community projects. We need to let the community raise the child again, right? It took a village to raise a child when I was growing up. Now you try to talk to a child when they're doing something wrong, and then they tell you, "You know me, father. Don't talk to me." Right? The parents they've given them that right where they can be disrespectful to their elders now, and we need to change that. We definitely need to change that. There are good young men. There are many good young men around that had great father figures. Some had no father figure, but they're still great young men. They're still trying. They're still thriving to be better men, and we can find them. We can help them. Right? Activities. We need more basketball courts, more football fields, more gears, more outreaches, organize something where they can, apart from playing a sport, they can do some community development, help a neighbor paint the fence, buy an old lady or old man groceries at the end of the week. There's a lot more you can do to enhance the human side. Richard, please go ahead, because I can do this all night.
Thank you, Chris. Most definitely, it took a community to raise a child. That statement is so true. I remember as a child growing up, you do something on the road, and neighbor Jane see you and give you 2 slaps on the road. You dare not go home to say, well, mommy or daddy, Auntie Jane hit me. First, you're going to answer why Auntie Jane hit you. Then it will be followed up by some additional from what Auntie Jane missed to give you on the road. These days, the children are willing to be the adults. Theodore Roosevelt once said, courage is not having the strength to go on. It is going on when you don't have the strength. A lot of times, male are faced with certain challenges, and quitting seems to be the easiest option. But leaving your family behind, there is a string that you're leaving there that could have been way better if you had chosen to stay and endure. As we're looking and celebrating today the International Day of the Boy Child, many young men you speak with, you're going to hear the story, especially those delinquent young men. They're going to tell you that things could have been better if. My life would have been different if. I could have chosen a different path if. The if always leads to that missing father figure in the household, that missing male role model. And while we consider women to be superhuman, even Superman had kryptonite. So there's only so much that can be done. But collectively as a unit, we really need to ensure that we work on fostering and strengthening those positive models that we can grow after, that we can see in our community, and really strive to be like as we continue to grow to be the better version of self. To wrap up the panel this evening, I'd now like to call on Dr. Grant, who will share his thoughts. Question?
Hi, good evening, Richard. Good evening, everyone. Thanks once again to Richard, Orange Light, and the Male Empowerment Network for inviting me to this unique but very much needed discussion as we commemorate the International Day of the Boy Child. So a lot has been said by the two speakers. I've learned a lot from what was said. And these are things which are not only said in this forum, but is shared in different fora that I have been a part of, different spaces. And yet we seem, in my opinion, not to be getting it right. I think one of the challenges is that we don't find men in a lot of these spaces and a lot of these fora. Although we sent out a call and an invitation to them, they seem not to come. If you scan our audience today, apart from the presenters, the audience makeup in terms of male-female ratio, the male is representation is not what it should be for an event like this. And so it calls for us to reach men in their spaces, be creative in our interventions in reaching them, and so to get the maximum out of these sessions and to hear their views too. Now, as I was reflecting on the slogan for this event, it speaks about restoring self-worth, restoring dignity, as I would paraphrase, restoring a sense of value. And if we're to restore something, it means that it has been lost. So in any restoration or restorative effort, the person or persons involved would have realized that something is missing, something has been lost, something has been misplaced, and therefore there's need for restoration. And we cannot restore self-worth in the boy child or in the male man if we do not go back to the foundation. The foundation is the key. When we're building our houses, we have to get our foundation right, because if the foundation is messed up, the structure will be messed up. And I think that the foundation of any society or any community is the family. And so if the foundation of society, they're in the foundation of society, in the family, there's a loss of self-worth of the boy child, of the male man. This will have repercussions on the society, because a healthy society would make up a healthy community, and a healthy family would make up a healthy community, and a healthy community would make up a healthy nation and a healthy world at large. So we have to revisit the boy child and the male man within the family and look at those ways in which their self-worth, their dignity have been destroyed, and seek to have, go into their spaces. We can't always expect them to come to our spaces. We have to creatively go into their spaces. Because, for example, if we call it a leadership seminar for the boy child or for the male man, how many males will turn out? Generally, when we have leadership sessions for young people at the level of the Guyana National Youth Council, generally there are more females than males. Males, not interested in learning about leadership or in learning about empowerment. And so we have to shift our focus or shift our interventions from expecting men to come to our sessions, but going where they are. Maybe we have to go to the rum shops, to the to the bars probably, and meet men and interact with them creatively, and through those interactions try to leave nuggets of empowerment to restore their self-worth and to boost their optimism. Because quite frankly, the men go where there is entertainment, and so the media and arts play an important role. As Chris pointed out, the music industry, the movie industry, they play important role in propagating messages that can help in our quest for empowerment or quest to optimize optimism and restore self-worth. And so we have to find those spaces, go into those spaces, and try to bring the healing that is needed. One of the speakers mentioned or alluded to the fact that men indeed are hurting. So not only women are hurting, because a lot of attention is placed on, for example, ending violence against women and girls. But what about the boys and men? Boys and men are also victims. And these victims become, in the vicious cycle of violence, perpetrators of the same hurts that they experience. So how do we help men to understand themselves, to find the healing to their hurts, to find the inner peace, and so that they can be the models of what a man should be? So going back to the foundation, the family, we have to help the boy child look to those models of men that they should be. Sadly, they don't see some of those models in their own family or in their own community. So they look to those models in the music industry, in the movie industry, and they try to mimic those models. So as we are empowering, we have to also put forth to the boy child those models that they should emulate. Looking back at the hierarchy of needs, there is physiological needs, there's psychological needs. And so many times in the family, we focus on the physiological needs, the need for shelter, the need for warmth, the need for food. And so the man who's a child father, say, he's doing so much, he's providing the shelter, he's paying the bills, he's providing the education, he's providing the warmth, the food. But he forgets that his role is not only to be a provider and a protector, but he's also a father, and a father who provides a sense of belonging and love and building on the intimate relationships in the family. And so, because men, we are dealing with so much, we're trying to make $1 out of 50 cents. We're dealing with our inner hearts. We're finding ourselves that we're not expressing, as someone mentioned, I think Richard mentioned it and some other speakers, as expressing that love within those intimate relationships. Love not only to the girl child, but to the boy child. And so when these boy children do not find that sense of love and belonging in the family, whether the father is there, the father can be there and not there. Or the father can be a sperm donor, just visit, pay child support, and that is it. That's what we call absenteeism in terms of fatherhood. And so once the boy child doesn't find that sense of love, sense of belonging in the intimate relationship that should come from his father, obviously he will look for it somewhere else, because all of us, innate in us, is a need for belonging. And once we don't find that belonging in the foundation of society or community, which is a family, they will look elsewhere. And so we have the boy child falling into gangs, boy child engaging in things at an early age that can be detrimental to their health and well-being, whether it's substance misuse, whether it's falling into the vicious cycle of early sexual intercourse without the proper guidance and the protection. All of these lead into a vicious cycle that leads the boy child down a path. And then when they're not paying attention as they should to their education as the girl child, so boy education is suffering as a result, their self-worth is lost in the process, because as we see, the girl child is doing well, or as we look at schools and we look at those who excel and those who graduate, we need to compare the number of graduates in terms of male and female. And I'm sure you can look that there are more female graduates from the University of Guyana than male graduates. If we look at even in our teacher training colleges, I know in the past we had more male teachers to provide that role model for the boy child. Now there are more female teachers graduating from our training college than male teachers. And that is based on a number of reasons. But if the boy child doesn't have that model in the home nor in the school, obviously they would turn to other models in the music, in the arts industry, and they will form gangs to have that sense of longing and belonging. And then they might have negative peer pressure that would lead them down a path that they should not go. And so it's a complex issue. I think we alone cannot fight it. We need to network with different organizations in the society and try to strategically target the family to help to boost or optimize that optimism and restore that self-worth and dignity. Another place that we can work with is in the schools, with the targeting the boy child, and other spaces at a young age. For the older men, the male men, we might have to go to those spaces where those males are, because quite frankly, they're not coming to our workshops, they're not coming to our seminars, they're not coming to our Zoom rooms to be empowered. So we have to think of creative ways in which we want to empower them. And I think that one of the ways is through one-on-one counseling and talking, and help men to talk. If men do not talk about what they're experiencing, their hurts and so on, they will not have a paradigm shift of where they are and where they need to go. And so these are my thoughts now, a very rich discussion and a very complex issue on this important day.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, for your carefully put together words of wisdom. I think oftentimes we really need to take some time to resonate on things as they happen. See, as boys, once you continue to share the hurt, this morning I was listening to a TED Talk, and they were speaking on depression. And not so surprising, the highest affected age range of persons who are depressed globally are within the 25 to 45 age group. However, the highest growing age range for depression are the children of those persons. So we need to think, what is it we're passing on to our children? What pains will the generation after us be carrying? And if we really want to help our boy child, the change starts with us. As individuals, we need to be able to invoke the change so that the children can see something positive. We can't just speak positive role models and say, we need to have positive persons in society, but we need to practice what it means to be a positive role model. So the children can look up and want to eliminate those characteristics. Martin Luther King also coupled it well when he said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in his moment of comfort and convenience, but is where he stands in the times of challenges and controversy. Because in the times of challenges and controversies, when we actually understand, that's where we see character. You see what a persons are made out of, and if you don't have a character building moment, you will see what will break that person. And these are things we really need to look into. So at this point, I've opened the room for persons who may have any questions they want to ask the panelists. You can either unmute your mic and ask the questions or share it in the chat box. So any member of our participant, this is your time to interact with the panelists.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Kashmir.
I have two questions. The first one is, what do you guys, as a panelist, what do you suggest can be done so that persons are a bit more aware as to the existence of anything that celebrates men and boys? For instance, 6:30 today is the first time that I have known that today is the day of the boy child. And I have two boys, so it's amazing that this is out there, but the awareness is not so much. So how can we ensure that we fill that gap and so that the awareness can be a bit more available? And the second question would be from a woman's perspective. As I said, I have two boys. As men, what would you say is one of the key things that mothers should bear in mind when raising their boy children?
Thank you for those questions, Tasha. And turn it over to the panelists. Any one of our panelists can unmute and answer. The first question, what do you suggest can be done to increase awareness of activities that celebrates men and boys?
All right, so thank you for the questions, and I'll try my very best to answer the first one. Where it comes to bringing awareness, being in the entertainment industry, this definitely could have been pushed a bit further with video ads, as well as pushing our actual flyer further. There's so much more that could have been done in advertising the time and the date. I plead guilty to not doing everything I could, but to answer your question, yeah, we can do some video ads, we can do some more flyers, and we can tell a friend to tell a friend, and hopefully, prayerfully, maybe next time our numbers double or triple. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, if I could add to what Chris said and attempt to answer the second question, besides the promotion, I think, especially as a mother of two boys, and those of us in the room and listening, those who will be listening to the recording after, with young men in our lives, it's important for us to do the research. Because it starts, as Richard said, and other persons would have said, that change starts with you as an individual. In terms of what I think is the most key thing as a mother raising boys would be to remember that you are raising that boy to be somebody's father, husband, uncle, neighbor. So raise that young man, keeping in mind that this is the young man that you would like to, that you would have liked to meet in your younger years. And I think that is something that we see as a challenge. As I would have highlighted early on in my presentation, you know, single mothers would share with you how they protect their daughters, knowing that the kind of men they have out there, but they would, in want of a better word, lose their young men with the hope that mothers protect their daughters. And to me, that's irresponsible, because I think we should like for ourselves what we want for others. So as a mother, in raising your young men, always consider, what would I like as a woman? What is the kind of men I would like to see in the society I live in? And I think once you keep that in mind, you should be on the right track to do an excellent job.
Thank you, Otto. Dr. Grant, would you like to add either one of the questions?
Oh my. To the first question, I think that I'm gonna be quite frank. I think how our society today is set up is that it celebrates more the girl child than the boy child. And so if this was International Day of the Girl Child, I think several weeks ago you would already start to hear about it, the awareness. In fact, you hear more about International Women's Day than International Men's Day. And so that is how the society is moving, probably because they're trying to curb some of the ills that are meted out to women and girls. So there's more celebration of women, celebration of the girl child, and more celebration of men and the boy child. And so we need to demand from our social actors in society that, hey, we cannot leave the men behind. I know that you're striving for gender equality and for women to take up more leadership roles and for women to play a more prominent role. And so society pushes more women and the girl child and the boy child and the men because they think that the women will be left behind. But we cannot do that in expense of the boy child and the women. And so we have to remind society that we exist, and we too need to be recognized. We need to be celebrated and continue to use our influence to do that. If not, we're gonna become an extinct creature. And so I'm happy that this network is birthed, and hopefully that it will be a force to reckon with in terms of reminding the UN, reminding the EU, reminding those international donor agencies that yes, the girl and women exist, but men and boys do exist, and we need to pay attention to them as well. In terms of a mother and her boy children, I would say simply ensure that there is a male in their life, ensure that there are men in their lives to guide them. Whether it's a single parent or whether there's whether there is a man in the home, a father in the home, we have to encourage the father in the home to pay that necessary attention to their boy child and give them that love that they need. Don't be afraid to hug them. Don't be afraid to reach out to them as men. Encourage the men to do so. And if there's no man in the home to do so, you have to look for someone who can play that role, who can be a positive role model very early in their lives. Because trust me, if they don't have that positive role model, if they don't feel that sense of belonging very early, they will look for it outside. And when they look for it outside, the influences may not be positive, it may be negative. So yes, there's so much that the mother can do in playing a role in the lives of the boy child. But the boy child also needs a man to help them to have that sense of belonging and to pull out those manhood qualities that we hope that they would have. As someone said, that they will be the man that you as a mother will be proud of, your sisters will be proud of, your aunts will be proud of, that the women in your life will be proud of, and for them to have those qualities and so forth, they need a male figure in their lives. So those are my comments based on the question so far.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. Let me also thank Auntie Maggie, Ms. Margaret, for those encouraging words in the chat. I think a lot of times we often miss the fact that we need to celebrate our boys for the qualities they have, the qualities they possess, and not try to make them what we would like them to be. A lot of times as parents, we want to mold our children into the ways that we think fit. We want to live our lives through our children. The things that we miss growing up or we never had, we want to give it to them. But what are the early decisions those children are making for themselves? What are the qualities they're showing us that, these skills and talents are what I have, and these are the skills and talents that I would like to mold, that I can make something out of? Are we acknowledging those talents? Are we encouraging them in those ways? Yes, as parents, we need to do what needs to be done, but at times we really need to give way for our boys to be boys. And I will acknowledge Auntie Maggie as yes.
Thank you very much, Richard, and congratulations to the organization doing this program, and thank you to the panelists. What I put in the chat was what Francis Faria asked me to share with you. But I have a question for Chris. As a comedian, a stand-up comedian, do you think that comedians contribute to the dishonoring of men? Or how can you, as a comedian, promote self-worth among men and boys?
All right. The first part of your question, comedy is exactly what it is. Comedy, it's meant for the release of stress, right? For entertainment, enjoyment. So in terms of positive role models, I've had really positive role models in guys like Dave Chappelle, Eddie Griffin, in as much as their language, seem to be colorful. A lot of times the messages they hit home, because those guys, oh my goodness, where it comes to being amazing at what you do, Dave Chappelle is a genius. I still think Eddie Griffin is a really underrated comedian, but the way they think out of the box and the way they describe stories, it's amazing. And being a stand-up comedian, I've had young men reach out to me wanting to do what I do. It's like looking at a drummer for the first time or a guitarist playing a solo. You know, I want to do that. That is amazing. I'm sure at least one person in this panel had a wow effect when looking at somebody playing the drums or playing a guitar and saying, I want to do that. Right. So yeah, I've had lots of kids, especially young boys, wanting to do comedy because they would have seen me on social media or they would have seen me on TV, you know, just being funny, just being me. So where it comes to influencing them positively, what I try to do is keep my comedy, especially for social media, very, very family oriented, very clean. I try to keep my material as family oriented as possible. Trying to stay away from the very slapstick kind of comedy that everybody goes for, right? I try to be different. It does not attract the multitude because the multitude they love the kind of dirty slapstick kind of thing. And as a comedian, I'm allowed that when there's uncensored, but of course uncensored is dubbed as an adult show, so I get to be an adult with the adults. And with social media and television, I get to be myself. I get to be a big child with the children and the younger adults, right? So as far as I'm concerned, as a comedian, um, it is one of the most difficult professions you can find. I say this because we singers compare themselves to comedians, and with singers, they can sing the same song 10 times, and it will be somebody's favorite song. They'll even sing along with it. It'll be catchy. They'll have it in mind. Comedians cannot tell the same jokes two, three, four, five times because you already know what the punchline is. You already know what the joke is, and it's not going to be funny anymore. So for comedians, it's a bit harder to go on stage and find new material. Although, you know, where it comes to reinventing the wheel with comedy, it's really, really tough. But it is a noble profession. And for those that do it and those that want to do it, I encourage it. Laughter is the best medicine. And it is a unique blessing and a unique gift to share the joy of laughter. And if any young person wishes to follow in that footstep, I commend you and I encourage you to work hard, to be funny, write a joke a day. It might not be funny in your mind, but it will be funny to somebody, right? That's what makes it difficult. We don't know if our jokes are going to be funny until we tell it. And it is scary sometimes, especially for me. I've been in the business for a number of years, and I'm still scared every time I go on a stage because I don't know if my material is going to be funny, especially when it's not lewd or it's not talking about something dirty. You know, you try to be clean, you try to be family oriented. You don't know if it's going to be funny, but you know, you try. And for me, it's been working pretty good for so long. So Auntie Maggie, thank you so much for your question, and I hope I have made some sort of attempt to answer it properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And we'll open for any closing thoughts from anyone. Any final question before we have closing remarks from the panelists? No further questions. I will allow our panelists to wrap us up with a few words of encouragement. We'll begin with Otto.
Thanks, Richard. Just to remind those of us here that the change starts with us. You know, I was trying to think of an analogy that I'm going to take a shoot at. So let's say we are all in a community here, and Dr. Grant has a dog that is a pest, is affecting our personal belongings, coming into our compound, ripping up our plants, attacking us when we are outside. So as a community group, we have decided to put some resources together to deal with this issue. Do we spend money on the dog, or do we spend money on protecting our property? I want persons to use the chat and advise me what would be the best use of the resources that we pull together as a community. Do we spend money on dealing with the dog, or do we spend money on protecting our property? I'm giving people 2 minutes to respond. Just for dog or property. The dog, thank you. Margaret. The dog, yes, the dog. Okay, so I have 3 answers, so I'm going with that. Similarly, when we think about excellent, and I'm glad we are saying dog. So when we think about domestic violence and what is affecting our women and girls, a lot of funding is spent on training for women, how women could make better choices. A lot of outreach are done for women, and I'm not saying it should not be done. But yes, Tashi, going back to what I said initially, let's get to the root cause. If the men are the one who are the perpetrators, the one who are committing these violent acts against women, why much more funding is not going towards tackling our root cause? Why much more funding isn't going towards addressing the men, meeting them where they are at, getting the messages out to our men that abusing a woman, abusing yourselves, in terms of, because there's a lot of violence among males as well, abusing children are not the way to handle conflict, and not the way is not the way to deal with issues. Let us start to have this conversation in all of our spaces, because as was said, and as we all agree, I believe, the change starts with us. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Otto. Chris, any closing remarks you'd like to share?
Well, of course. Otto, my goodness. It could not have been put any better. I completely agree with you. That's amazing. Yeah, let's make it an everyday thing. Let's let charity begin at home. Look in your neighborhood, look in your community, look in your village, look at your neighbor, right? Look at yourself. Look at yourself. Are you as a man, are you as a male, the person that you want your son to be? Are you as a male somebody you think your son will be proud of? Right? Start with you, take the speck out of your own eye, and then look around. See how you can be a positive influence. For our young boys, sky's the limit. Whatever it is you want to be, anything that you spend enough time with, you will perfect. Anything. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be a pilot, you want to be anything. Once you spend enough time with it, you will perfect it. That's it for me.
Thank you, Chris. Dr. Grant?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Richard, once again for inviting me. I'm glad to be here in this very important discussion. I'm glad that I took time out of so many things that I do to be here, because this discussion needs to be had and needs to be had more often. And so I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for all those who are here. Thank you to the very distinguished male panelists for sharing your thoughts, and I've learned. I just want to leave the reminder, based on all that was said, that it is crucial for us to, as was said before, to have interventions that would target the men where they are, because we cannot expect them to come where we are. And so we have to go into those spaces where we can empower them, optimize their optimism. And there's a lot of pessimism, especially post-COVID, and the inflation of prices in the markets and so on, that are giving men a lot of gray hair and having them wonder where the next meal would come from. And so we need to reach them. Men are busy trying to, at least the good men, trying to make ends meet. And so we have to see how we can get some of their time to come to these sessions to be empowered. They have to see the need to be empowered. And so we have to have a hook with a bait, so that they would come and see the need to take some time to be empowered, so that they can be optimism, so that it can be restoration of those values that would make them as men. And of course, we have to continue to reach our boy child or boy children, and we have to continue to encourage them. We have to let them know that they can be the best that they can be. They don't need to compete with anyone else, but be the best that they can be. We live in a competitive society where the boy child is placed to compete against the girl child. And then we say, you know, if your sister can do it, why you can't do it? We have to look at the words that we use to our boy child. Are they uplifting words? Are there words that would encourage them to be the best that they can be? Or are we comparing them with others? And so destroying their dignity and destroying their self-worth. So we have to see boy child for who they are, and we have to nurture them, hone their skills so that they can be those positive role models that we can look forward to in generations to come. So those are my words for now, and we hope that this is the genesis or the beginning of many fruitful discussions. And we need to hear from the men if we're going to have those interventions that will reach them. We have to have more discussions with them, creatively have focus group discussions with them to know how we can meet them. We cannot design programs for men if we don't hear how they can be helped, how they need to be empowered. We cannot assume how they can be empowered, but we need to hear from them how they can be empowered. And that would take a lot of work in reaching their spaces and having focus group discussions, so that these sessions would be based on evidence and research and work that we've done, reaching out to men in the community. God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, for those very insightful words. I would like to thank all of my panelists this evening. I think you guys really add the flavor that we needed to ensure that this program really met its objectives. As we close, I'd just like to remind you, amidst all that was said, remember, men, boys, they don't usually wear their emotions. They don't usually string their hearts on their sleeves. But at the end of the day, they're still human with feelings. And a lot of times, because we think that men and boys are some type of robots, they tend to be treated anyhow. They hurt, they are humans. They may cry internally because they don't want you to see those tears falling externally on their face, but they still need some amount of love and encouragement. As we start this discussion tonight, like I said, it's our first of its kind for the organization. We will continue. We will also take into consideration the recommendations made this evening. I can assure you that some work has started in terms of meeting men at their place of convenience. We are currently testing something called the Men Night at a sports bar, where the slogan is tough there. If you can't take the pressure, don't come to the bar. Those conversations that need to be had, those taboo topics that are being pushed to the side are raised at that location. It's Blast Sports Bar. Something we would have noted within the 4th week of doing this, the women are outnumbering the men. The ladies are telling their friends to bring a friend, but it's the same guys almost every week. So like Kwesi rightfully said, really need to get inroads into where men associate and to ensure that the programs are designed with the FUBU model for us, by us, so that we're having the topics that men are interested in so that we can bring about that desired change. Thank you again to our panelists. We also thank all our participants for joining us this evening as we spend this time together to celebrate our boy child and to start the discussion that needs to be had. Remember, this month end, a date will be announced soon. We'll be having a mental health session with Dr. Shane Tull, who will be sharing as well mental health from a male perspective. As we continue to engage, we will roll these topics out. And hopefully soon we'll be able to do more in-person sessions where we can reach persons at their place of convenience. Thank you again, and do enjoy the remainder of your evening. It was my plum pleasing pleasure to be your host this evening. Good night, all.